Are you ready to go?
I am. What I would like to do is have you bring up the first two photos that I sent to you
Did you
and
text
show everybody.
did you text them to me?
I no, I put them in the chat.
Oh, of the Zoom. Okay, got it right. Got it. I'll be right there. So entertain these people
Okay.
for 10 seconds and I will have that going.
Okay. So I'm going to drop the mic at the beginning of the show and not at the end. Everybody is talking about um, the Dr. Vance Bolter, um, and they're also simultaneously talking about him in his, GI Joe haircut, and then him with the hat on, as if they're the same people. I'm going to tell you up front, those are not the same people. The person with the cowboy hat is not Vance Bolter. So um, I'm going to tell you who he is, though. Um, the uh, Probably ought to start with the original story of the two state Congress people being assassinated, and the original story. Yeah, so this is a picture off of the Praetorian Guard website. Vance, his wife is the CEO. Vance is the director of security patrols. Todd over there is the security training manager. Now go to the cowboy hat one. Can you bring it up?
Is that it right there?
Yes. That's that's the training guy. That is not Vance. And I sent those two photos to Alpha, which I always do because as a cop, he can facially verify. He said, if those are not the same people, they're twins. That was his response to me. So go back to the original picture.
That it?
Yeah, that's Todd. And then when you put Todd's face next to the cowboy hat guy, they are identical. So Todd is the cowboy hat guy, and Vance is Vance Boatler, the one that they're saying was the person that assassinated them. But I'm also going to suggest that's probably not true either, because from the video camera footage, it literally could be anybody with that mask on.
Well, that's
And
true. That's actually a really good point. And that brings up something we need to hammer home to everybody. We're living in the age of AI and CGI, and there is not a darn thing you should believe that your lying eyes see until you've got it really well verified. They can make fake images that look more real than actual video. So always, always pause, hesitate before you overreact. You're going to be seeing so many fake images of going forward. It's ridiculous. And I think personally, we've got to do one of two things: create an international law that anything created with CGI has a disclaimer on the screen saying this was, created by a computer, but people will cheat on that. So we're gonna have to have a disclaimer that says if this is done with real footage, it needs to show that this was real footage. And if you lie about that and put CGI with that disclaimer, there's some serious fines because right now computers can lie to us so fast, we're not going to know what we're seeing. So this is a big deal.
yeah, and I would also suggest if you look at the build of the person at the house in the mask, they're of a body structure, a different build. So we could actually be dealing with three different people. I just want people to keep that in mind. Um,
So let
so
that's
also,
a great point. Continue. It's a great point. It's one I had not considered.
so I also want to point out that there are some very big questions about how, because almost every one of these events, there's dirty cops on the inside. And a lot of people aren't talking about that. We know that the CIA, the FBI has infiltrated most of our police departments. So just also keep that in mind. Because we come to a point And oh, by the way, his cousin is a retired cop. Vance's brother is or cousin is a retired cop from a nearby town. Um, how did the cops know to go to the second congressional person's house? I'm just going to ask that question now. I think I have the answer, but I want people to start thinking critically about this stuff. And that the cops just so happened to arrive in time for the second person to be there, which they are telling us is Vance, and it may or may not be. Another question we need to ask is the CIA involved? And I'll go into that in further detail because there's some very interesting connections with this guy and some of the countries that we have been talking about in, Congo. Well, not just Congo, Moldova, okay. Latin America. There's several countries that he's involved in.
I'll look forward to that. Let me just set the table for those who aren't caught up on what happened. A couple days ago, a couple of Minnesota state legislators, one on the Senate side, one on the House side, one woman and her husband were assassinated. The other two were attempted assassination, and they're blaming it. Right now, the story is that this guy did it. What I find very interesting, and the Democrat social media try to immediately call this guy a Trump supporter. They went so far as to have a video out there of an overweight pizza delivery guy in his 50s say that this guy was my roommate, and he's a big Trump supporter. He voted for Trump. Well, that doesn't quite wash with a lot of things that we know for a fact right now. First of all, this guy worked for Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate that ran with Kamala Harris very recently. That's a fact. Second thing we know is that he lived about 50 miles away, was a millionaire, lived with his wife and 5 kids, and there's no reason he would have a roommate who's a pizza delivery guy 50 miles away. So that's completely made up. So forget about the Democrat or the left-leaning hoax. That was garbage. We don't know if the story we're hearing now is 100% true, but the first story that came out that he was a Trump supporter appears to be absolute garbage. What I find really interesting is that the 2 legislators from Minnesota that were shot, one killed, one apparently survived, had just days previously crossed the aisle and voted with Republicans to block a law or to stop Minnesota state funds going to illegal aliens for medical purposes, medical welfare. The message is really clear, and I think a lot of people that are in politics heard it. If you cross the aisle, look out. This is political warfare. It is absolutely heinous, and this is a big friggin' deal, and that's why we're talking about it here.
Okay, and so I did put the 2 pictures side by side if you want to go ahead and pull that up, and I'll go ahead and go on just a little bit. So obviously, the reason I ask is if the CIA is involved is because he was on a USAID project in the Congo.
Because of course
he has several different companies. The Praetorian Guard is the security one that gave him the access to that pseudo cop car. That was from his company. Yeah, so you can see Todd is the guy with the cowboy hat on. It's crystal clear those are the same. Those 2 pictures are the same guy. So the cowboy hat guy is Todd, not Vance.
So the video we saw, I think this morning, with some guy with a cowboy hat smashing in the window of an SUV.
Yes, that is Todd. That is not Vance. And everybody's saying that it's Vance. It is not. And I think that's where they came up with. I think Todd is the guy that may have been in that boarding house, not Vance. So Todd may rent a room in that boarding house, and that car was stashed there. Todd didn't have a key, so he's the guy with the cowboy hat you see in the video smashing the window.
Okay, I'll buy that so far.
Okay, so I just wanted to go ahead and show the people, if they hadn't seen it, the picture of the guy with the mask on as well. I just sent that to you. So here's one of the big mic drop moments too. So you mentioned that he was operating in the Congo. He also is affiliated with Marathon Oil Company. He did work for them. And isn't it weird that on the same weekend this goes down, that the Marathon plant in Texas is set on fire?
Uh,
Just coincidence.
well, I know a little bit more about Marathon Oil, so I'm going to be digging some stuff up while you talk.
Okay. So um, I want to also point out that Todd was originally an undercover cop. Very, very important. Um, I have not been able to determine where, but I did read an article where it did reference his experience as an undercover cop. All right. So now, in order for Vance to travel internationally, we know two people have to be involved: the State Department and the CIA. He was in multiple countries in the Middle East. He was in Eastern Europe. He was in Latin America, and he was in Africa. Now, what does those things all have in common? Those are the hotspots for Operation Gladio and CIA activity to overthrow governments: Eastern Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. So, and he has to be known to the State Department and the CIA in order to get the visas to do all of that traveling. I'm going to put another seed out there before I go on. There is a lot of information. There's videos out there of uh, him doing ministry in the Congo, preaching. So he went to two different schools to learn how to preach. One was called the Christ for the Nations Institute, which is in Dallas, Texas. And that's a whole nother story if we can get to it. Cardinal Stritch University is another, which just recently closed. That was a Roman Catholic church. And given the fact that we know about the Roman Catholic Church and its involvement in Operation Gladio, both of those things were a red flag to me. But here's the real red flag. His target audience is young Black youth. And why that's the most concerning to me is because of the fact that they are generally vulnerable people that can be exploited. That's exactly the focus of Jim Jones's ministry and the whole Jonestown incident. It focused on young Black youth because they are subject to being radicalized. And if you look at the area in which this guy lived, you have the Somalia population all around you. And there are a lot of very vulnerable people that in some cases were radicalized in their home country as young soldiers that were then brought into the Minnesota area and again are looking for a, for lack of a better term, an adult male role model. And this guy was very involved, and so was his brother in youth activities. So that's a very big deal. Also, I want to mention there's three different houses that are in play here. His $500,000 mansion, and I think I have a picture of that. I'll send to you real quick. That's the first one. And then the boarding house, for lack of a better term, that was reminiscent of the crime scene in New Orleans, where the reporters get there, the guy's talking on his phone, they don't take his phone, the reporter's walking through the house, everything is touched, but it's supposed to be a crime scene. All right, so that's a picture of his $500,000 home in the country. I sent you the one of the boarding house one.
I'm bringing it up right now.
Okay. And this, young woman that is out in front is the reporter, and there's also pictures of her actually walking through the house. I mean, they didn't secure the scene or anything. So again, this is reminiscent of the them telling a story, but it's not the story. Okay, so that's the boarding house. And in the back of this is where you see that video that's going around the internet of him breaking the window. It's in the back of this house here. It was caught on a camera from the back of the house on the right hand side.
Yeah, was that home security? Or was that someone filming it? It was a very still
No,
camera.
it was home security.
I assumed as much.
All right, the last house, which is this is totally weird. All right, so we mentioned him being appointed to a committee for Governor Walz, right? You mentioned that in your overview. On that appointment letter, there's an address. This picture of the gray house is the address that's on his appointment letter. That's not his house, though. We just showed you his house, his mansion out in the country. But for whatever reason, this house's address is on the appointment letter, indicating that that's where he resided at the time.
It's a very interesting SUV parked in the front.
That's the car that is the security car that looks like the cop car that was out in front of the Congresswoman's house. That's the vehicle. That's one of those Praetorian security vehicles that allows him to mimic a cop.
Interesting. And if you go back to the picture of him with the latex mask on, he's apparently dressed as a cop as well, which is why they opened the door in the first place. But
If that's him.
if, if. So the other, yeah, and
Yes.
there's a lot of ifs to this story. We're not, like, again, this is more than a 48-hour rule. There's a lot of misinformation coming out about all this. We're also told that his wife was stopped by police with
Yep.
children in the car. And again, he's married with 5 kids. And in the car, they found multiple passports, which is very interesting, gun, ammunition, and what I'm hearing is about $50,000 worth of cash. And this guy has not been apprehended as of right now, correct?
Not that I know of, but I wasn't on the internet looking. I just gave you the picture of her. This is from the Praetorian Guard. She is listed as the president and CEO, probably for minority business purposes. But bring that up so people can at least see what she looks like.
Almost there.
That's fine.
I gotta resize. I gotta resize these pictures each time, so it takes me a second.
Okay, so we talked about the different houses. Just in case you guys see this, there is also a house in Green Isles that, according to Paul Sperry, belongs to his parents. His dad passed away, but his mom is still living. And I just sent you the pictures of his work experience. And I want to go over them. The Red Lion Group is the group that is contracted with USAID. The Praetorian Guard one, which isn't even listed on his LinkedIn, which I find very interesting, because that's the kind of the big pole in the tent here. So he's with the Red Lion Group, the Praetorian Security Company, and has listed here as a general manager of 7-Eleven for 5 years, which of course is very interesting. Unless they're using 7-Eleven as a place to give these people employment that they're bringing over as basically like a cover. That would be my take on it.
You know, the name that jumps off the page of his employment history to me is Del Monte. It's one of the largest multinational food companies in the world. As we've been going through Operation Gladio, we understand that companies like United Fruit, what is it, Chiquita Banana, etc., have a lot to do. They have a lot of influence on U.S. foreign policy. We've overthrown governments in South America so these guys can get cheaper labor and land and resources.
which
That one jumps off the page at me.
which is why it's very interesting about his travel to Latin America too. And also, what should jump out at you is there is another company called the Bolter Company. The Bolter Company is located in Wisconsin. And I did a genealogical research this afternoon. And you know how we have went over the naming of with the doctor reprogram, how like when the different generationals, they'll use like a maiden name in the middle name, and they repeat names like George H. Walker Bush, um, all of those. So there is a naming precedent for these elite families. So if you go back and you look at the Bolter family that owns, oh, and what business is the Bolter company in? Food processing and industrial kitchen type apparatuses, like those big restaurant, like prison stoves and refrigeration and stuff like that, and food. So it makes perfect sense that this guy starts out in the food industry because in the next state over, there's an entire family with the exact same name. Now, what I found most interesting is if you look at his dad, Vance's dad's name, Donald Luverne Butler. His parent, his dad is Emil George Ludwig Butler. They all come from Poland, just in case anybody's interested. And if you go back to the guy that founded the Butler company in Wisconsin, his name just happens to be three of the four names I just mentioned. So there does seem to be, although I don't have the smoking gun, I went through all of my resources, which is not many, on the ancestry side. And I do not have like a gravestone that says, or an obituary that says these guys are related. But their names are almost identical if you look down through these changes. So I'm just going to leave that there. And I did find one really interesting one. What would have been his great great grandfather's name was Gottlieb, as a middle name, as in like Sidney Gottlieb and all of the crazy medical weirdos. So anyway, so I wanted to add in. The food thing is very important.
What you're mapping out and what you're hinting at, without an exclamation point, is a theme that we've been hitting on with our Secret Societies series for months and months. Is that America is not this free people where all men are created equal. We're ruled by a ruling class of aristocrats, and they own the corporations. They put their people in positions of power and influence in the government, whether it be the State Department, the Pentagon, what have it. These are the people that determine the direction of our country under the guise of a democracy, which is supposed to be a federal republic in the first place. And you see this, we've been talking about it on a geopolitical level, but right here, this sounds like almost a regional level. And it's the same system. Anybody who's lived, any town you've lived in, you always know there's some people that are born on the right side of the tracks, but if they get pulled over by the cops, they're not getting a ticket. That's the system we're describing. That's aristocracy. Their children go to quote unquote the best schools. They get, their resumes, get them in the front door of the corporations or government, whichever direction they want to go. And that's how the system really works. It is not a democracy. It is not a republic. It is an aristocracy.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they will stop at no ends to maintain their control of power and to protect each other. And this is not a Republican thing. It is not a Democrat thing. This is a power thing.
Correct. All right. So Sergeant Todd Bolter is his cousin's name that retired from the West Hennepin police force in 2013 and then went to work for Verizon, which is very interesting from a communication standpoint. Um, so also, one of my first questions was, why did that roommate guy still have his phone reading Trump support text? Why was that not confiscated as part of the investigation? Um, also, I wanted to give people a real quick timeline, um, just from some of the pieces we just talked about. It was 3 3:35 a.m. when it was reported that a call was received for the cops out checking on the first assassination attempt, that directed the cops to go to Speaker Hartman's house. At 6 a.m., there was someone at the rooming house. Okay. That's the cowboy hat guy, is breaking in the car at 6 a.m. And then at 10 a.m. today, the wife was stopped. So that's kind of just an overview of, so you can kind of make some sense spatially of what the events are. They also have another nonprofit that was called You Give Them Something to Eat, Inc., that Vance is the president of. I haven't heard too many people talking about that one. But it was created in June of 2022. You Give Them Something to Eat, Inc. And again, with the food industry, right? Around 9 a.m., so about an hour before the wife is stopped, the hat and the stuff on the side of the road that supposedly belonged to Vance, which I'm telling you belonged to Todd, was found on the side of the road about an hour before they stopped the wife. And he has I'm told it's a brother by the name of Brent. Vance and Brent, both of their accounts on X has been locked. We talked about, so I want to just mention the name of his church. So him and his wife created a church, and the name of the church is Revo Formation, REVO, like in Revolution. Formation.
Yeah, I read this one. This is good. There's some good stuff here because that was all over his social media.
Yeah. So he said that his job was to seek, and this is a quote, seek out militants to share the gospel with. So what better cover to go into the Congo and recruit Operation Gladio people than to be doing so for the Lord. So
Well,
I think that's suspicious as hell.
well, we only have a century plus, and with a big plus here, of history of us using the church or
Churches.
missionaries to conduct intelligence and subterfuge
Yes.
operations in foreign countries. It wouldn't be the first time that happened by any stretch.
The Protestant church, the Catholic church, um, Jewish synagogues, every church has been used for intelligence gathering and operations.
Yeah, just as much as the NGOs and the charities that do their work, in all these third world countries, quote unquote, where maybe 1/10 of the money that's supposed to be spent helping the people actually goes to them, and the rest of it, well, we have a pretty good idea of where the rest of it goes.
So the church where he supposedly was ordained is called the Cardinal Stritch Universities, where he went to school. It was founded by Gordon and Frida Lindsay. Their organization was called the Voice of Healing. It's in Dallas, and it's one of those roll around in the aisles, speaking in tongues kind of church. And it has a very interesting background. They have students from 48 different countries. 35% of their students are foreign nationals. And let me give you the names of the countries that they recruit these students from. See if this rings any bells for you. Germany, Belarus, Moldova, Romania, Brazil, Japan, and India. So you know what I read? Coup, coup, and Germany.
Well, no, well, wait, we haven't cooed India yet.
No, attempted coup.
Yes, that's they're being surrounded right now, but that's a different
Yeah.
conversation. We're not going to do that
Yeah. Okay.
conversation
So
today.
we've got, we actually did assassinate the Japanese prime minister. So Brazil, Romania, Moldova, Belarus, we definitely destabilized them. We didn't overthrow that guy. Destabilized India, and Germany is the hotbed of a lot of Operation Gladio's cell seeding anyway. So I just found that very interesting that that's where they go to recruit people, almost like they're setting up training. And the last thing I want to cover is his ties to the funeral home industry. Did you read any of that stuff?
Nope, this is all new to me. That's new to me.
Okay, so there's a video on the internet of him basically. It looks like it was an intro video for a class that he was taking, and supposedly that, and it doesn't have a time frame on it, but supposedly he did send out some feelers after his USAID contract got nixed that he needed a job, and that he did tout that he had funeral home connections. So just for those who don't know, I have to set the background here. The funeral home industry, if you just type in funeral home and controversy, you're going to be inundated with stuff of nefarious, and Texas is one of the worst ones. They have a company down there, and I'm not going to remember the name off the top of my head, that basically does mortuary services internationally. They're definitely the biggest mortuary entity in the whole world. And they basically have the Texas State House in their back pocket. They failed like every audit that's ever been done of them. The whole thing is very, very corrupt. But there's a lot of important things that happen in a mortuary. Obviously, when you have an assassination and you don't want a dead body for evidence, they somehow get them cremated in 2 days. Well, it really helps if you know somebody in the cremation business in order to be able to get something cremated in 2 days. There's also the material that comes out of the crematory process. There are people that use that ash for particular things that is not good. And obviously, there has been lots of controversy surrounding where people are getting basically dirt, and the funeral homes are keeping, or the mortuary, whatever, is keeping the ashes for nefarious uses. You also have a scandal that happened in Texas where they were leasing out body parts. So they were hacking up bodies that they were saying that they buried in a closed casket and leasing body parts to things like research labs and stuff like that. So again, him having ties on top of everything I just said to the funeral home industry, not a good thing.
All right, well, that's pretty good research there, Colonel. And this is a topic that, we're not being, I don't think we're being told the full story. We're told a story, not the story. We heard that a million times. But there's a lot more. And I think the big takeaway is there is shenanigans going on and about a lot of false information being put out. There's probably a lot more to this than meets the eye. And to me, the big one is the intimidation of Democrat legislators and saying, don't you dare cross the line. No matter who actually killed them, that's the direct message that was put out. It is political terrorism and intimidation.
Absolutely.